I never thought I'd be the kind of husband who would find himself writing about infidelity. It's like some twisted plot from a low-budget drama, but here I am, and it's very real. Let me take you back to when everything started to crumble. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. We were that couple, always the center of attention at parties, laughing and joking, sharing inside jokes that only made sense to us. We had built a life together, one that I thought was solid. Our wedding photo hung prominently on the wall in our living room, a reminder of our commitment, our love. Or at least it was until it vanished. It all began when Sarah started working late more often. At first I was supportive, understanding that she had a demanding job in marketing. I'd come home to an empty house, the silence wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I told myself that it was just a phase, that she was busy with deadlines. But then little things began to shift. She'd come home late, her perfume smelling different, like some floral scent I'd never seen in our bathroom. I dismissed it initially, attributing it to her new coworker who had a penchant for glamorous fragrances. But as the weeks passed, I noticed more changes. Her phone was glued to her side, a barrier she'd never had with me before. She'd become defensive whenever I asked about her day, her responses clipped. "Oh, just work stuff," she'd say, brushing me off with a wave of her hand. I wanted to believe that it was all in my head, that I was being paranoid. The real turning point came when I came home from work one afternoon, and the first thing that hit me was the absence of our wedding photo on the wall. I stood there, gaping, confusion washing over me. "Sarah," I called, searching for her. "Where's our photo?" My heart pounded in my chest. It felt like a bad omen, an unsettling sign that something was terribly wrong. "Oh, I took it down for a bit." "It didn't match the new decor," she replied, her tone casual, as if she was talking about changing a light bulb. But I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of guilt. I pressed her, insisting it did make sense, but she just rolled her eyes. "You're being ridiculous, Jake, it's just a photo." But I wasn't convinced. The missing photo gnawed at me, fueling my suspicions. It was the type of thing couples don't just do. It felt like a bad omen. I began to dig deeper, looking through her social media accounts, tracing her texts late at night. My gut churned with unease, and soon I stumbled upon something that would turn my world upside down. One late evening, I noticed a message on her phone, a reply to a text that had come in while she was in the shower. It was from a guy named Mark. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll make it worth your while." It felt like a punch to the gut, my whole body freezing as the realization sank in. My heart raced, anger bubbling to the surface. I felt betrayed, deceived, my entire foundation shaking beneath me. When Sarah got out of the shower, she was blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break. I confronted her, my voice trembling with a mix of shock and rage. "Who is Mark? What's going on?" She went pale, the color draining from her face. I'll never forget the way she stammered, trying to weave a web of excuses. "He's just a colleague, Jake. It's nothing, you're overreacting." But her eyes darted away from mine, the guilt palpable. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in a sea of betrayal and anger. I wanted to shout, to make her understand how deeply she'd wounded me, but all I could do was stand there, barely able to process what was happening. The woman I loved, the woman I'd built my life with, was betraying me. The emotional weight of the moment crashed over me like waves, and I realized this was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey I never wanted to take. I didn't know how to move forward. All I could focus on was the sudden void where trust used to reside. I needed to figure out how to deal with this betrayal, this new reality. As I stared into her eyes, searching for any hint of truth, I felt a surge of determination. If it was a war she wanted, then I'd have to prepare for battle. The innocence of our life together was gone, and a new chapter, one filled with intrigue and revenge, was about to unfold. After that confrontation, everything shifted. I felt like I was moving through a fog, my days blurred with disbelief and anger. Sarah tried to downplay the situation, insisting that it was just a misunderstanding, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew the truth. The betrayal had cut deep, and it was up to me to figure out my next steps. To say I was hurt would be an understatement. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, one where the woman I loved had turned into a stranger overnight. I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my emotions. I could hear Sarah moving around in the house, laughing at something on her phone while I felt like I was slowly disintegrating. The laughter that once warmed our home now felt like a cruel joke. At work, I was a ghost. My colleagues noticed my absent-mindedness. I couldn't focus on anything but the gnawing suspicion that Sarah was still in contact with Mark. I found myself obsessively scrolling through social media, trying to find any indication of their relationship. Each time I saw a couple posting pictures of their happy lives, the pang of jealousy twisted in my gut. One evening, I returned home early, determined to catch Sarah off guard. I wanted to see if she was still texting Mark. As I walked through the front door, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The house was quiet, and I could feel the tension in the air. I tiptoed to the living room and spotted her phone on the couch. My heart raced as I picked it up, my hands shaking with anticipation. I unlocked the screen and my stomach dropped as I scrolled through her messages. There it was, a string of texts that revealed everything. Sarah had been meeting Mark for drinks after work, their exchanges laced with flirtation and innuendo. My heart ached as I read her words, which were filled with longing and excitement. The betrayal was tangible, each message piercing through me like a dagger. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt sick. I wanted to hurl the phone against the wall, but instead I took a deep breath and placed it back on the couch. I had to think. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront her again just yet. I needed more evidence, something concrete that would snap her out of the web of lies she'd been spinning. Over the next few days, I transformed into a covert operative in my own home. I started paying attention to the small details, her routine, and the subtle shifts in her demeanor. I followed her out one evening after she claimed she was going out with friends. I parked a few streets away, my heart pounding as I watched her drive off. I made sure to keep my distance, not wanting to alert her. It was a surreal experience. The man who once trusted his wife unconditionally now felt like a spy sneaking around his own life. I tailed her to a trendy bar in the city, and when I saw her walk in, my heart dropped. There was Mark, leaning against the bar, flashing that cocky smile that had probably won her over. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to storm in and confront them both. But I held back, knowing that I had to gather more evidence first. I watched them from a distance, and it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Sarah was laughing, leaning into Mark as they shared drinks. The way she looked at him, with those familiar eyes filled with interest, made me feel sick to my stomach. The image was seared into my mind, and I knew I wouldn't be able to forget it. This was my wife, the woman I loved, engaging in something that felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. After what felt like an eternity, they finally left the bar, her hand brushing against his arm. I couldn't shake the feeling of rage coursing through me. I followed them back to our neighborhood, adrenaline fueling my actions. I parked my car and waited, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. As they approached our house, Sarah leaned in closer to Mark, laughing at something he said. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Who did he think he was? Who did she think she was, allowing this to happen under our roof? I crept back into the shadows, my mind already working on a plan to expose her, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. That night, I returned home, my heart still racing. I replayed every detail in my mind, trying to figure out my next move. I could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. It was time to turn the tables, to show her that I was more than just a husband. I was a man who wouldn't be walked over. But how could I execute my plan without losing myself in the anger? I knew I had to play my cards right to draw her back in before I made my move. I wouldn't confront her just yet. Instead, I'd gather my evidence, and then I would make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my self-worth, about ensuring that she could never look at me the same way again after I exposed the truth. The game was on, and I was ready to play. The days that followed felt like an emotional roller coaster. I was living a double life, my outward self going through the motions of a seemingly normal marriage while internally I was preparing for battle. Each night, I resolved to collect more evidence, to build a case against the woman who had shattered my trust. Sarah continued to act as if nothing had changed. She'd come home from work, slap on a smile, and ask me how my day was. I'd play along, diving into mundane conversations about what I'd eaten for lunch or the latest show we'd been binge-watching together. But every moment was laced with an undercurrent of tension and deceit, one that I could feel bubbling beneath the surface. I was now a stranger in my own home, sharing space with someone who no longer felt like my partner. One evening, I decided to dig deeper into Sarah's social life. I looked through her phone again when she stepped out to grab some groceries. My heart raced as I unlocked her screen and opened her messages. I found more flirty exchanges with Mark, talk of meeting up again soon and planning a weekend getaway. My blood boiled as I read her words, each one a reminder of her betrayal. "I can't wait to be with you. It feels so right," he had written. Those words echoed in my mind, fueling the fire of anger that had taken over my heart. That same evening, I received a notification from Facebook. I'd created a fake account weeks prior, one I'd been using to monitor Sarah from afar. I'd been hesitant to dive into the world of social media spying, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I logged in and discovered that Sarah had posted a picture from the bar, a picture of her and Mark, both looking cozy and smiling widely. My heart sank. It was one thing to suspect infidelity, but to see it laid out in front of me felt like another gut punch. That shot stirred something deep inside of me. I felt rage, humiliation, and something else, an urge to make her feel the pain she was causing me. But before I dove headfirst into revenge, I needed to gather more evidence, to present her with undeniable proof that this wasn't just a fling. I needed to expose the reality of her actions, to confront her with the truth that she could no longer deny. The next week, I devised a plan to catch them in the act. I had a friend who worked at the bar they frequented, and I reached out to him, asking if he could let me know whenever they were there together. I needed to see them for myself, to witness the betrayal in real time so that when I confronted Sarah, I could do so with cold, hard evidence. While I waited, I began mentally preparing myself for the confrontation. I imagined the moment over and over again, her reaction, the excuses she would make, the deflection. I knew she wouldn't accept blame easily, and that thought brought a certain thrill to my gut. I was ready to stand my ground, ready to show her that I wouldn't be the man she could manipulate anymore. A few nights later, I received a text from my friend, letting me know that Sarah and Mark were at the bar again. The anticipation built inside me like a tidal wave waiting to crash. I quickly got dressed, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and excitement. I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. As I drove to the bar, thoughts raced through my mind. What would I say? How would I confront her? Would I be calm, or would I let the anger spill over? I needed to remain composed. I needed to ensure that I was in control of the situation. I parked a block away, taking a moment to breathe before walking towards the entrance. As I stepped inside, I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the two of them at a corner table. They were leaning in close, laughing as they shared a plate of nachos. My stomach churned at the sight of them together, her hand resting on his arm as she tossed her hair back, completely unaware of my presence. It was surreal, watching them so carefree while I felt like I was dying inside. I took a deep breath and approached them, my heart racing. I could hear the laughter and music drowning out my thoughts, but nothing else mattered at that moment. I was on a mission and I couldn't turn back now. As I got closer, I felt my pulse quicken. Should I just say something? Or should I wait for the right moment? Finally, I cleared my throat and they both turned to face me. Sarah's expression changed instantly, from joy to confusion then. Horror as she realized it was me standing there. "Jake," she stammered, her eyes wide with shock. Mark looked between us, clearly caught off guard. "Mind if I interrupt?" I said, my voice steady, but inside a storm of emotions raged. I wanted to scream, to unleash the anger that had been building for weeks, but I forced myself to stay calm. I would handle this like I was in control, like I was the one who held all the cards. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, her tone defensive. I could see the panic rising in her eyes and I relished it. I came to see what was so important that you'd risk our marriage for it, I replied, taking a step closer. You know, it's hard to miss the way you two are getting cozy. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado fading as he realized the depth of the situation. I could see Sarah's expression change as she realized that I had the upper hand. Jake, let's talk about this, she said, her voice now laced with a hint of desperation. I could hardly contain the satisfaction surging through me. Oh, we will talk and you can explain this little rendezvous, I said, gesturing to the two of them. I felt a wave of power wash over me. This was it. This was my moment to expose her, to lay the truth bare. The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel the eyes of the other patrons on us, but at that moment I didn't care. I was ready to unravel the threads of her deceit and force her to confront the reality of her actions. She needed to understand that this wasn't just a fleeting affair. It was a betrayal that would change everything. I leaned closer, ready to unleash everything I had been holding back, prepared to show her that the lies could no longer hold us together. The confrontation I had been dreading was finally here, and I was ready to face the truth. The atmosphere felt electric, and I could practically hear the tension crackling in the air as I stared down at Sarah and Mark. It was like I had stepped into an alternate reality where the rules of our marriage had been rewritten. Her face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation, and for a moment I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Jake, please, this isn't what it looks like, she stammered, her voice shaky. It was the classic line, and I could see her scrambling for an explanation, grasping at straws. Mark and I we were just having a few drinks. It's not like that at all. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Not like that. Sarah, you're sitting here with him, all cozy, while I'm at home thinking you're working late. Do you really expect me to believe that? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. It was time to call out the lies. Mark opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. No, you don't get to speak. You're the last person I want to hear from right now. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the fury bubbling just beneath the surface. I had to channel that rage into something productive. I needed to make my point without losing control. What's going on here, really? I asked Sarah, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. Do you want to explain how you've been lying to me for weeks? How you've been hiding this from me while I supported you through everything? I gestured between them, my heart pounding. What is this, Sarah? Her eyes darted from me to Mark, and I could see the panic setting in. Jake, it's just a misunderstanding, she said, her voice rising slightly. I swear I only went out with him a couple of times. It didn't mean anything. I love you. The desperation in her eyes was palpable, but her words fell flat. I had heard "I love you" too often to believe it now. You love me, then why are you here with him? Because from where I'm standing it looks like you've made your choice. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unsure how to navigate the tempest brewing before him. I could feel the weight of his presence. He was an unwelcome reminder of the betrayal. I took a step closer to Sarah, lowering my voice. How could you do this to me? I thought we were in this together. I thought we had something real. Tears began to well in her eyes, and I felt a flicker of something, perhaps pity, but I quickly squashed it down. Jake, I messed up. I didn't mean for it to happen. Mark is just, he made me feel alive again, you know. You've been so busy with work and I felt alone. The excuses rolled off her tongue like a pre-rehearsed monologue, and I could see the shame creeping into her features. Alone, I echoed, incredulous. So you decided to cheat. That's your solution. Step back, my frustration boiling over. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it. Instead, you chose to betray me. The finality of that statement hung in the air like a noose, tightening around the fragile bond we once shared. I could see her beginning to crumble, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. I'm sorry, she said finally, her voice a mere whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. I could feel the anger morphing into something more profound, a deep sadness that settled in my chest. You've hurt me, Sarah. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You made your choice, and now it's time for me to make mine. I could see the realization dawning on her face, the flicker of panic mirrored in her eyes. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm saying that I'm done, I replied, my voice steady. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I know the truth. I can't keep living in this lie. The words felt liberating, a release of all the pent-up frustration and heartache I'd been holding in. Sarah reached out, her hand trembling as she grasped for mine. "Jake, please don't do this. We can fix this. I can end things with Mark. I promise it won't happen again." But her pleas fell on deaf ears as I shook my head. "You've had your chances and you've blown them. You've betrayed my trust, and now I can't pretend that we can just go back to the way things were." Mark, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should all just take a breath," he said cautiously. "This doesn't have to escalate." I shot him a glare. "Stay out of this, Mark. You've already played your part in this mess." I turned back to Sarah, my heart aching but resolute. "This is not just about you and me anymore. It's about respect and trust, and you've thrown both away. I need space, and I need to figure out where I stand." I could see the weight of my words settle over her, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I had finally found my voice, had finally stood up for myself in a way I never had before. As I walked away from that table, I felt the heaviness of the moment settle in my chest. I didn't look back, not wanting to give in to the wave of regret that threatened to creep in. I was done with the lies, done with the charade of a perfect marriage. In that moment, I understood that I had to take control of my own narrative, to reclaim my life from the wreckage of betrayal. I didn't know what the future held or how I would navigate the fallout, but I felt a newfound determination. This was the beginning of my journey towards healing and self-discovery, and I was ready to face whatever came next. After that night, everything changed. I moved into the spare room, the air heavy with the unresolved tension between Sarah and me. The house felt like a ghost town, haunted by memories of laughter and warmth, now replaced by silence and resentment. I spent my evenings pacing the floor, replaying the confrontation in my mind, wondering if I'd made the right choice. It was a tumultuous emotional landscape, shifting from anger to sadness to a strange sense of relief. Sarah tried to reach out to me in the days following our confrontation. She would knock on the door to the spare room, her voice tinged with desperation. "Can we talk, please, Jake? I want to fix this." Each time, I would just respond with silence, too hurt to engage in another round of emotional manipulation. I didn't want to hear her empty promises anymore. I found solace in my friends, leaning on them for support as I navigated this new reality. They rallied around me, reminding me that I was deserving of more than betrayal. They listened to my rants about Sarah and Mark, offering words of encouragement and reminding me that it was okay to feel angry. I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of trying to be the perfect husband. I started running again, hitting the pavement to clear my mind. With every stride, I felt a little lighter, a little more in control. I also dove into work, channeling my energy into projects that had been neglected during the chaos of my marriage. My colleagues noticed the change in me. The spark that had been dimming was reigniting. Each accomplishment felt like a small victory in the battle for my self-worth. I began to realize that while Sarah had betrayed my trust, she hadn't taken away my ambition or my drive to be better. But even as I moved forward, the weight of the situation loomed large. I knew I had to make a decision, whether to salvage what was left of my marriage or to cut my losses and move on. Each day felt like a tug-of-war between my heart and my head. I was torn. The memories of our love flooded back at unexpected moments, but I couldn't ignore the reality of her betrayal. Then one evening, after a long day at work, I found myself thinking about our wedding photo, the one that had vanished from the wall. It was a stark reminder of the life we had built together, a life that now felt like a distant memory. I couldn't help but wonder if there was a way to reclaim that life, to forgive and move forward. But then I remembered the way she'd brushed off my concerns, how easily she'd dismissed the damage she'd caused. That night I sat down and penned a letter to Sarah, pouring my heart out in a way I had never done before. I listed my feelings, my doubts, my fears, and the pain her betrayal had caused. I laid it all bare, not holding back. I wanted her to understand the emotional toll it had taken on me. I also wanted her to know that I was not interested in playing the victim anymore. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen counter, hoping she would read it and take it to heart. I wasn't ready to face her yet. I still needed time to process everything. The letter was my way of giving her a glimpse into my soul, a way for her to see the hurt she had caused without the immediate heat of confrontation. A few days later, I was surprised to receive a text from her. "I read your letter, and I'm sorry for everything. I want to talk." A part of me was hesitant, fearing the emotional roller coaster I'd been riding would start again. But I knew I had to confront the reality of our situation. I agreed to meet her at a cafe the following afternoon, my heart racing with both anxiety and anticipation. When I arrived, I saw her sitting at a corner table, her expression a mix of regret and determination. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was to come. As I approached her, I couldn't help but notice how different she looked, vulnerable, almost fragile. It struck me how quickly things had changed. The woman I had once loved was now sitting across from me, an embodiment of my heartache. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice soft. "I've had a lot of time to think about everything." I nodded, unsure of what to say. I didn't want to come off as cold, but I needed her to understand that I was still hurting. "I'm listening," I replied, my tone neutral. "I never wanted to hurt you," she began, tears welling in her eyes. "What I did was wrong. I let my loneliness dictate my actions, and I'm so sorry." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I've ended things with Mark. It was a mistake, a huge mistake. I want to fight for us if you're willing to give me a chance." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. I wanted to believe her, to think that we could somehow work through this. But was I really ready to forgive her? "Do you understand the damage you've caused?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "You broke my trust, and trust is the foundation of any relationship. You can't just expect me to forget about it because you say you're sorry." "I know. I can't expect you to forgive me overnight," she admitted, wiping away a tear. "But I want to show you that I can be better. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. I love you, Jake." Love. The word echoed in my mind, a reminder of the bond we once shared. But love couldn't erase the betrayal I had felt. I needed time to think, to consider whether I could truly forgive her and allow our relationship to heal. "I appreciate your honesty," I said finally. "But I can't promise anything right now. I need to figure out what I want, and I need space to do that." Sarah nodded, a mix of understanding and sadness in her eyes. "I get it. Just know that I'm committed to making it right. I won't give up on us." As we parted ways that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't have all the answers, nor did I know what the future held. But I knew one thing for certain. I was reclaiming my power. I was no longer just the husband who had been betrayed. I was a man who was learning to stand up for himself, to value his own worth. It would take time, but I was ready to explore what healing looked like for me, whether that meant repairing my marriage or walking away altogether. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to find my way. In the weeks that followed our meeting, I found myself on a roller coaster of emotions. I kept my distance from Sarah, allowing myself the space to think and process everything that had transpired. The initial shock of her betrayal had faded, but the pain lingered like a dull ache in my chest. I needed to reflect on what I wanted, not just for our marriage but for myself. I continued to lean on friends and family during this time. They provided a support system that I desperately needed. I found comfort in their wisdom, each conversation helping me navigate the complexities of my feelings. I needed to establish boundaries, and with those boundaries came clarity. I realized that I could still love someone while also protecting myself from further harm. During this reflective period, I took a hard look at our relationship. I thought back to the laughter we'd shared, the dreams we'd built together, but I also recalled the moments of distance, the late nights alone while she was out with friends. There were cracks in our foundation long before Mark entered the picture, and I couldn't ignore them any longer. After a few weeks, I felt ready to meet with Sarah again. This time, I suggested we meet at a park, somewhere neutral and open, a setting that felt less emotionally charged than our previous encounters. I arrived with my heart racing, unsure of what I would say or how she would respond. But I knew that it was time to have an honest and candid conversation. When I saw her sitting on a bench, I took a deep breath to steady myself. Her face lit up slightly when she saw me, but I could also see the apprehension in her eyes. We exchanged small talk, but the tension was palpable. It felt like we were both holding our breaths, waiting for the conversation to turn serious. "I've been thinking a lot," I started, my voice steady but my heart pounding. "About us, about what happened and where we go from here." Sarah nodded, her expression reflecting both hope and fear. "Me too. I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work if you're willing to try. I love you. Jake and I will do anything to earn back your trust." I appreciated her honesty, but I also needed to voice my own feelings. "I know you're sorry and I want to believe that you mean it, but the truth is it's going to take time for me to heal. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, and I can't just forget what you've done." "I understand," she replied softly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want a chance to show you that I can be better." Paused, considering her words. "I'm not sure what the future holds for us. I need to figure out if I can truly trust you again, but I also realize that I need to focus on myself during this process." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears, and part of me felt the pang of sympathy. "I get it. I'll respect your space, but please don't shut me out completely. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk." We talked for a while longer, tentatively exploring the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. It was clear that we both wanted to understand what had gone wrong and how we could move forward. But it was equally clear that this would not be easy. The hard work lay ahead of us, and I had to be prepared for the emotional toll it would take. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I felt a flicker of hope. While I wasn't ready to dive back into our relationship, I realized that this could be the start of a new chapter, one where both of us would have to work to rebuild trust. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to put in the effort if she was. In the following weeks, we began to communicate more openly. Sarah started attending therapy, both to work on herself and to understand her motivations behind her actions. I found my own outlet in counseling, where I could sort through my feelings of betrayal and anger. We took small steps towards healing, sharing our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. It was a slow process, and there were days filled with doubt and setbacks, but I noticed the effort on her part. I found myself softening, allowing glimpses of the love we once shared to resurface. However, I remained cautious, reminding myself that healing takes time. Months passed, and while we weren't back to where we had been, there was a newfound sense of understanding and compassion. I learned to express my feelings instead of bottling them up, and Sarah worked hard to prove that she was committed to our marriage. We still had a long way to go, but the seeds of trust were slowly starting to take root. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson about love and resilience. Betrayal can shatter trust, but it can also become a catalyst for growth if both partners are willing to put in the work. I had come to understand that true love isn't just about the good times. It's about navigating the storms together and emerging stronger on the other side. As I reflect on this journey, I realize that while I still carry the scars of betrayal, they remind me of my strength and my ability to stand up for myself. This experience has taught me the importance of self-worth and the necessity of maintaining boundaries in any relationship. Life is unpredictable and messy, but I am learning to embrace the uncertainty, to find joy in the small moments, and to trust again, both in others and in myself. Whatever the future holds, I know I will face it with a clearer understanding of what I need and deserve. Trust may be fragile, but love, when nurtured and respected, can overcome even the deepest scars.